Let's jump right into it. So this is the second uh, workshop in this series, the Wednesday workshop series. I'm going to be your host again for this one. My name is Julia Quigley, and I am a senior process analyst at Pokeoak Solutions. So I do a lot of real-time flow charting. I write SOPs, refine SOPs that have already been created, all the good technical writing aspects that go into process documentation. And so today I'm going to be talking about how to define a process using the flowchart method, which is one of my preferred methods. And I'm going to be using a software called Lucidchart. But if you don't have a whiteboarding software or process mapping software like Visio, you can just use a pen and paper if you wanted to follow along or try this after the workshop is over. And then, as I mentioned before, if you have any questions as I'm going through, you can please pop those in the chat, and then I will go back at the end. We have a section for Q&A, and I can make sure that we're all on the same page. So today's goal, we are going to create a visual model of one of our core processes and organize those main steps in a logical sequence, usually based on a timeline and based on the role responsible for completing the tasks that we're going to outline. On my scenario, I'm going to use the example of I received an email request for a new appointment, and I have to schedule that appointment between me on the sales side and my new customer. And there's also going to be some onboarding paperwork, so I get some background info before I actually meet with that person. So I want to make sure I have the right paperwork completed, and that ends my process ends when the appointment is actually confirmed with the person. So on your side, you can determine if you want to use this practice to map an existing process, or if you want to use it to design a new one that you're trying to implement at your organization. And then when you're doing that, just make sure you define a scope. What is the logical starting and ending point for that process to make sure you have all of the required tasks completed by the end when you think your process is all wrapped up. So I'm going to do a demo on my side with my scenario, and then if there's time at the end, there should be a few minutes, we can have a participant volunteer if they want to share one of their own slides, one of their own processes. We can walk through it together. So I just wanted to call that out here. If we have a volunteer at the end, you can feel free to raise a hand in the chat, and we can do a demo with your process. So before we get into it, I want to highlight why process documentation matters. I see or I hear the things that are displayed in the quotes on my screen quite a bit whenever I'm going to a new client. So a lot of the things I get are, it feels like we're all making it up as we go. No one ever really explained to me why we do it this way, but this is how it's been done. Or I also hear I have to keep going back for more info. So I might be waiting on information, or I got piece A, but I forgot about piece B, C, and D. So I have to go back to that person for that information again. So whenever we have a process documented and it's shared with everybody who's supposed to be doing the tasks, it really ensures a lot of visual clarity of the overall process. It helps you identify bottlenecks and dependencies. So if I have to complete several tasks before I can run a report, I make sure that I complete those tasks before I do the report generation, so I don't have to do it again once I have all the data actually set. And whenever you have a good process documented, it enables standardization, which results in repeatability, accuracy, and scalability, which is what we want. So today's workshop is going to be aimed at anyone who should be involved in the task of actually mapping the process. So that mainly involves the process owners, the ones who perform the tasks in question. And it is also important to involve any of your stakeholders or anyone that has a really specific output that they're looking for, or they want it to be handled a certain way. And then after you actually do the action of creating a process flow, you can always go back to the subject matter experts or the super users of whatever systems you're using to make sure that it's going in the logical sequence and everything is being captured as it should. All right, and then if you wanted to take this time, you can share in the chat what your name, your role at the company that you work for, if you are comfortable sharing that. And then if you have an idea of what process you're going to define today, you can list that in the chat. So how to define a process? Last time, it was 2 weeks ago, we started with a SIPOC diagram. So you can see my fun example of restocking dog treats over here. And this is a high-level view of the process steps of restocking dog treats, and then all of the suppliers and the inputs that are required to complete the process, and what happens after, and who gets the results of completing this process. So that was last time. And last workshop, we did the same scope. So it was managing leads, and it was from receiving a customer request through confirming the appointment. So what I want to do is turn this chart with all the sticky notes into a cleaner, more actionable diagram that I can share with my team. So the other way that we can go about defining a process, my preferred method, is creating a flow chart. So you can see I have a flow chart here, which is what we're going to go through and create in this workshop. This is just the finished, a sneak peek at the finished product. But you can think of it again as like a helicopter view of a process, provides that logical flow of actions to successfully complete each task in order and make sure that you're covering all the actions that you need to take. You can also see that there are some different shapes and symbols that are used. I'll go through each of those when I open up my template. And then you can also see that there are 2 swim lanes. So this yellow swim lane is going to be for the customer, and this green swim lane is for sales, which is me. And that's just the role that is responsible for completing these blocks within it. So that's how you read it. So my customer, Sally, she's going to be responsible for completing these 3 items. And then eventually I will be responsible for all this in the green. Okay, so to set it up, make sure you set yourself up for success. I always have a template that I like to use, but if you're going to use a piece of pen and paper, just make sure you have your process name and the scope, so the starting and ending points, just written across the top or anywhere that's not clogging up the entirety of the page. And then you can create horizontal dividers if you want to create swim lanes, if it's going to be a couple different roles doing completing the process. And then the next step is to list all the tasks, make sure they're connecting in a logical flow, all the shapes are correct, and all the people are listed, and all the types of inputs are accurate. And it's that easy. That's how you create a process map. So we'll do a little walkthrough of how to go from this SIPOC chart that can get a little hairy into a flow chart to make it cleaner and more visually appealing overall. So now we can go to demo time. All right, let me exit out of here, and we're going to flip over to my template. So this is what Lucidchart looks like. And this is like a whiteboarding software, process mapping software. So this is what we did last workshop. We defined our SIPOC diagram for the process of managing leads, and I have it my name, my scope, and then these are my main steps of the process over here. So we created the SIPOC last time of managing leads, and I want to take this information and put it into this flow chart with swim lanes instead. So before I do that, I want to make sure I understand all of the shapes that I'm going to be using. And when I have this template that I created, I have a bank. It's like a custom shape bank, so you can just keep pulling out as many as you need, and you never run out, and they are all formatted the same. So it keeps saves some time in the end with standardizing and formatting. So your first shape that you're going to see most of the time is a process block. That just represents a simple task that you're going to perform, like create purchase order or send an email to a customer. That would be a process block. Terminators are these oval shapes, longer oval shapes, and that is like a start or a stop. So the thing that kicks off the process and how you know it's going to finish. These are the shapes that you use for the start and stops. You might also see these blocks with the parallel lines. That means that it's a predefined process. So it is a task, but it's more involved. So there might be like generate this report. If I have like generate, I don't know, past due report for if I'm in accounting, that could be a whole sub process that needs 8 different steps depending on how involved the software is. So that's what this predefined process means. It just means that there will be another flow chart to define this actual task that we just wrote out. The diamond represents decision points. So you will have a couple different arrows coming off of a diamond to indicate yes, no, or if it's like over a certain dollar threshold. Manual input is essentially the same as a process, but it requires a manual input in a system. It is not automated. I use this 6-sided shape for meetings, this parallelogram for milestones, and you won't have all of these custom shapes in one flow chart. It's as you need to use them. If there's ever any specific templates or like a purchase order template, I would use this document icon to indicate that there is an actual document that we can use and send to our customers or our vendors. When I am interviewing people and they say, well, it would be nice if we could remember to send out the confirmation email, but we kind of stopped doing that. It just fell off the wagon because we don't have the hours. That's where I would put this green outline as this would be an ideal state. And that's how I dig into like recommendations for continuing work. And then the last one here is a bottleneck. So it's any task in the process that is either really holding up work for someone else, or maybe there's a delay in the timing. So I might need to complete task A within 10 days, but the task that follows it is considered a bottleneck because I was supposed to complete that within 5 days of kickoff. So I like to use that red block to really single out, this is a problem area, and we should look into that to see how we can address it. Okay, after that spiel, we can get into the actual art of process mapping. So to start, I'm just going to reiterate that my scope is receiving a customer request, and then I'm going to go through confirming the appointment. And these are my main steps up here. So to start, I'm going to say the customer is going to send an email to sales requesting an appointment. And what happens after that is I own the sales inbox. So I am going to receive the email request. I check my calendar to see what my available times are. And then I will email back to the customer with a list of my available times. After I send that off to the customer, she will receive and reply with a selected time, assuming one of them works. And I usually just get all my notes down, all the words down, and I'll resize and reformat everything afterwards. So it's going to look a little messy. So after Sally receives and replies with a selected time, I am the one that receives that response. So I'm going to go down here and block off the time on the calendar. And then this is where I realize that I have her name and I have her calendar appointment time, but I don't have any of her background info. And I really want to support or get myself set up for success before I have that meeting. So there's a couple things that I want to get from her before we actually host that meeting. So then I determine what new customer questionnaire is required based on whatever type of service she's requesting. And after I determine what questionnaire is required, I send an email with the questionnaire attached. And I know that after I send that email, it'll go to Sally. So Sally will receive the questionnaire and then she'll complete it on her own time. And then she emails me back the completed questionnaire. So now I finally receive the completed questionnaire. And I'm going through my mental checklist of I got my appointment request, I blocked off the time on the calendar, it works with the customer, I received my completed questionnaire. I don't think I have any more questions about what I need to begin to actually host this meeting, this kickoff meeting. So the last thing I want to do is just let her know that the appointment is confirmed. So I'm going to send an appointment confirmation and let her know the details are all set. And that ends with Sally receiving that appointment confirmation. So you can see I have the terminators, these, what are they called? Oval shapes, to say that this is where it starts and it you can just follow the lines and easily see I received that email request, check my calendar, email back, we set the time, and then we complete the questionnaire. So if I'm going through this, this would be a current state process flow. What I like to do is make sure, and I have a slide about this I'll get to in a second, but what I like to do is clean it all up. So I like to make sure that all of the blocks are either similar or as close to they can be matching size so that it's all clean and it looks nice for the reader. I'll align these all up and make sure that the swim lanes are the perfect size as well, just so it looks really clean and they want to look at it. And then this is also when I start to make like almost a mental list, but I will start it in a Google Doc of how can we improve this process? Because my mind doesn't really stop with this is current state and that's good enough. I can see this is me going back to the customer at least twice with questions. I feel like I should be able to condense those two back and forth into just one. And maybe there's certain software that I can implement because right now this is all manual. So if there was a calendaring software or something that just immediately, depending on the customer type, it could send out the questionnaire automatically and receive those replies. So after we map out this current state is when I really like to take a step back and think with whatever the organization's goals are in mind, how can we automate and change to improve this process going forward in the future state. So that is what a finished process flow looks like. Popping back to these slides, I want to make sure that we do all of our follow-up tasks. So after a workshop is completed, I like to clean up the flowchart, like I mentioned, make sure all of my shapes are accurate, it's all aligned and it looks nice. And then I'll just crop that into a PDF to send to whoever I need to share that information with. I want to determine what my key insights were, whatever gaps I can notice. I saw not necessarily a couple bottlenecks, although I do need to receive a questionnaire reply before I have that first meeting. I did notice a couple redundancies because I kept going back to the customer to request more info or different info. And I think that I could automate some things, especially with the calendar software. So after that, also, when you have it done, if you do have questions for the specific subject matter expert, that SME who does the work, make sure like, is this correct? Is this the order that you do it in? And these are all the high level steps. And then they can give you that sign off and then you can do the really deeper dive into like defining the SOP for how to perform the process, not just the visual aspect. Okay, so we have some time. It is 12:19. So we have like 10 minutes if anyone on the call wants to go through one of their own processes. Does anyone want to raise a hand in the chat, or do we have anyone from PYS? Anything from the chat I should highlight now?
Hey, Julia, it's Kristen. Michelle and Lauren said they weren't able to provide an example right now, but I certainly do have one if we don't have any other questions from our attendees.
Yeah, I believe the next slide is just Q&A. So if we have any questions and answers, we can go through that and we can go through another example.
I have a question.
Go for it.
How do you determine the level of detail when you're creating a process map like this? Because I know we can map, we can go very detailed into how to do a certain task. So I'm just wondering, how do you identify, okay, so this one I'm going to stay high level, and at this point I'm going more detailed. Do you
Yeah.
mix those two, or you try to keep them all on the same level?
There is a bit of a mix depending on what the client's looking for. So I've had really involved workflows that are like 8 different swim lanes and they span pages and pages. But I don't want to get into the point and click motions. That's what I want to save for SOPs. This is really just to make sure high level, I can call out the specific, if I need a document, I have that document named and listed. So I know when I'm looking at like a bullet point of how to perform this process, I know I need to have the purchase order template on hand, and I need to know how to, like there might be, if I'm paying a purchase order, there might be a check run. The step of, so let me take a step back. In that example I'm trying to talk about is like processing purchase orders. So if it starts with creating a purchase order, we want to make sure it gets paid. But from the purchasing side, I'm not really involved with or worried about the accounting, the specifics of accounting. So I know that a check run has to be performed to pay this invoice, but I don't need to know the specific details of performing that check run, which might take like 10 steps and take a while. So that's when you would bring in that like predefined process box to say, this is when you perform a check run. That will be detailed further like elsewhere, and it's for accounting knowledge. This is from the purchasing side of things. Does that help?
It does. It does. Thank you.
Cool.
Julia, I did have a question about workflow. So what do you do in the case where an activity may be performed over a period of time? Like, for example, if a customer service team is involved, but behind the scenes, if they're, if they're monitoring activity, but is that a step that you would need to identify in a workflow?
I would probably, yeah, it's interesting. That's a good one. I do like to work on timelines, linearly on timelines. So what I would probably do is sort of like a, I would probably use a milestone to say, let's say that when time is blocked off of my calendar, that starts a process on the customer service side. So I would say kickoff, CS, onboarding, like if it's client onboarding. And then if I know what the ending point of that onboarding, like mini process is, I know that once my appointment is confirmed, that's the end. So then I can say, CS onboarding complete. So that's the way I've been dealing with it. But if you have any suggestions, I am open to it. But that way I know that, in my mind, I know this parallelogram is like a milestone or something that's like a pretty big indicator. So I know that this is a kickoff or a handoff from one team to the other. And then this is something where that other sub process has been complete. And then we can, maybe after CS onboarding is complete, then I know that's my trigger to host my new customer meeting if I wanted to go a step further.
Julia,
Yes.
it's Colleen.
Hi, Colleen.
Um, so if you wanted to, I know you said that you use the square with, or the rectangle with the bars on either side to
Sure.
indicate a more complex process, but if you wanted to show that process, and it really was tangential to the work that you're doing now, but it was, people wanted to see it and they should see it, how would you handle that?
Um, you make me want to use, that question makes me want to use layers. So if I had, let me expand my workspace here, and then I'll add another lane. So if I have a process of, last time I think we said I gave processing vendor invoices. So I receive an invoice and then I have to process a vendor invoice. But if I want to see the details below that, I would have receive invoice. Bear with me as I just do this. Save to drive. Perform a three-way check with all of my documents to make sure it's an accurate invoice. And then I can, like, this is where I would have my perform check run if I wanted to go even further. Getting a bit meta now because we have two of them. And then we can say, switch back to a regular one, send payment to vendor. So this is the main block that I'm concerned with. but maybe I want to also show the accounting aspects that happen that go into processing vendor invoices. And the way that I've done that so far is creating layers. So the way I do that in Lucid is there's this icon down here. You can open up that and add a new layer. So I would call this new layer vendor invoices, and you can see that it did like it grayed out the background because I'm working on this new layer that's in front of me right now, and the original flowchart that we did is in the background. So I have my vendor invoices layer. I'm going to go back to my main page of the flowchart, cut my items that I just created, go back to this vendor invoices layer, and I'm going to paste it right there. So that way, when I'm here at the high level view, what I can do is hide those other steps that go along with processing vendor invoices. So it's cleaner from my purchasing side, if I'm up on the purchasing side and this is accounting. And then once I have to bring accounting in, and they're like, well, yeah, process vendor invoices. What does he mean when he says that? I'm gonna be like, okay, well, here are my 5 steps to process those vendor invoices. So that is a nice handy tool of Lucid. You can use the layers and then you can hide those different layers for a cleaner look. If you want to do, you could do that for expanding on the predefined processes, or I've used that as well as for future state examples to highlight this is what it would look like if we tried to implement this one section of the future state in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Keep me on my toes. I like it. Well, are there any other questions that I can answer at this time? If not, I do want to highlight that in 2 weeks' time, we will have Laura hosting our next workshop Wednesday, and that's going to be on effective SOP documentation. And that'll be on 5/14 at 12 p.m. And then we can send, oh, I don't have the link able to copy and paste. Let me see if I can grab it real quick though. Oh, thank you, Kristen.
Got it for you, Julia.
All right, so she put the link up there in the chat to sign up for the next workshop Wednesday. And if you ever want to learn more about Pokeoak Solutions and any of your workshop hosts, you can go to pokeoaksolutions.com. Thanks so much, everybody. It was lovely to have you all on here.
Thanks, Julia.
Yeah, have a wonderful day.